The Chicago Blackhawks have lots of tough decisions to make this summer regarding their restricted and unrestricted free agents. And on today's episode, I'll take a look at each one of them and discuss whether they'll be back on the roster next season.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at JackBushman2. And make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey. So that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder again to everyone watching this right here, right now on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, please go and hit that like button, comment, and subscribe to help keep the momentum going with the show right here, right now, as we're heading into a very important offseason for the Chicago Blackhawks. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, make sure to be downloading all of the latest episodes. It's 100% free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may be tuning in. You can go and rate and review the show as well. That also helps me out tremendously. And last but certainly not least, got to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Make sure to go and download the Game Time app right now, create an account if you haven't done so already, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Got a really episode on tap here today. And to kick things off, the Blackhawks, as I referenced off the top, have a very important summer coming up regarding lots of different things. But first and foremost here, now that we are in off-season mode, they have a lot of unrestricted and restricted free agents to make decisions on. And I figured I'd go through each and every one of them, discuss their given situation, what the season looked like for them, what their past deals looked like as well, and talk about whether we could be seeing them back with the Chicago Blackhawks next season. I figured I'd start off with the forward group here. And before we talk about all of the UFA and RFA forwards that the Blackhawks have to sort things out with here over the next couple of months, I think it's also crucial to take a look at who's going to be coming back next season, so we have an idea as to how many roster spots are going to be open, and also have an idea of what kind of pieces the Blackhawks could be looking at bringing back or adding in free agency or via the trade market this year, all that good stuff that they have to figure out in the offseason as well. So in the forward group, who we saw this year, who we know is going to be coming back for next season unless there's a trade involving them or something, it's Connor Bedard, obviously leading the charge offensively. Taylor Hall has already been skating here for probably a month now and seems to be well on track for the start of training camp in the fall. He's going to be back with the Blackhawks. You got Andreas Athanasiou, Philip Kurashev, Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, Ryan Donato. Don't forget, he signed a 2-year deal with the Blackhawks, has 1 more year left on that contract. And then we also got to see Frank Nazar and Landon Slaggert at the end of the season. Got to think those two are still going to be competing for roster spots, while they may have an edge over some guys given their upside and where the Blackhawks kind of rank them in the prospect pool. They're still going to have to go out there and earn their stripes. And if they have a bad camp, they're certainly liable of being sent to Rockford to open up the year, which honestly wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them either. And then Lukas Reichel, hopefully after the Calder Cup playoffs, knock on wood, I'll be talking about that here in just a moment a little bit. So make sure to stay tuned for segment 2 to hear all about Lukas Reichel joining the IceHogs ahead of their first round playoff series with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Hopefully it's going to be a very long and successful postseason run for Lukas Reichel, and he can officially close the door on his AHL career. We kind of thought that was already going to be the case going into this season, but the start of the year obviously didn't go as planned for Reichel, but looked like a different player when he returned from that 10-game stint in Rockford, kind of similar to what he looked like at the end of the 2022-2023 regular season. But hopefully he'll be able to start off next year with a much better charge, and we'll be able to make the Blackhawks opening night roster and be playing a meaningful role for them. And then maybe some guys like Cole Gutman, Colton Dock, I think from the AHL could be in the mix to make the Blackhawks out of camp. I know there are going to be a lot of new forwards joining the pro scene next year, but I figure most of them are going to be starting in Rockford unless they have an outstanding training camp and really blow the doors off of the Blackhawks organization and coaching staff. So getting into all of the unrestricted and restricted free agents that the Blackhawks have, starting first with Tyler Johnson. I think this is the easiest one of the bunch to discuss because he made it pretty clear in his exit interview what his plans are going to be this offseason. He is going to be testing the free agent market barring something absurd happening, and sounds like he really wants to get back to playing competitive hockey once again. And the Blackhawks, while I do really hope and believe they're going to be better next year, still don't think they're going to be quite ready to compete for a playoff spot. So next we go to Colin Blackwell, who I think is a really interesting case. In his 2 years with the Chicago Blackhawks, they've been injury plagued, but when he has been healthy, he's been rather effective. And as I talked about yesterday when dishing out my end of the season awards, make sure to go and check that out if you haven't done so already as well. Just a really good effort guy, a guy that I'm sure was beloved by all of his teammates because of the role he had, bringing the energy, bringing the intensity, a really reliable two-way forward, and did also chip in for 8 goals and 4 assists, 12 points in his 44 games worth of action. The question for Colin Blackwell is his age and whether or not you believe he's going to be healthy enough to deserve a contract. Quite honestly, given how many of these guys the Blackhawks have to sort through, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up letting Colin Blackwell go. They do have a decent amount of spots available, but I think it's a good time for the Blackhawks. Even though Blackwell is a good glue guy, good energy guy, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go in a different direction. But this is a tough one for me because Blackwell undoubtedly would be rather cheap to re-sign. Not that money's an issue for the Blackhawks, but can get him probably around $1 million coming off a contract in which his AAV was at $1.2 million. So he would be a good bargain guy to bring back. They do have the space for it. It's a tough one to decide. I wouldn't be shocked one way or the other. Really intrigued to see what's going to happen with Colin Blackwell. Maybe the toughest one to dictate, in my opinion. Next, we go to Mackenzie Entwistle, and I'm just going to kind of tag him with Reese Johnson here because they're both kind of in similar situations, coming off their ELCs at $800,000 per year. Coming off of basically their third full professional seasons together. Entwistle tallied 11 points in 67 games, 5 goals and 6 assists. While offense I knew was never going to be his thing, I necessarily haven't seen him take strides in those areas like I had hoped. He put up better numbers in all categories as a rookie, and he is going to turn 25 this summer. And I know he's a popular teammate and a good locker room guy because kind of like Blackwell of the role he played and just a well-liked guy. And same with Reese Johnson, well-respected, well-liked, works hard on the penalty kill, isn't an offensive guy. He only had 5 points in 47 games this year, but a good face-off man, even though he was used on the wing, which kind of made me scratch my head this year for a majority of the season. Won over 50% of his face-offs again at the NHL level. I just don't think there's going to be room for both of these guys, unfortunately. And I've talked about this in the past. I personally would rather have Reese Johnson because of his versatility. He's the better center iceman. I think he's probably the better defensive player of the two, more of a PK guy than Mackenzie Entwistle is. With Macker, there's more size. While Johnson is the more physical of the two, Macker seems to be the one that fights more and definitely has the speed upside and probably the higher upside because of his frame out of the two. I just think Reese is a little bit more reliable and is a depth guy that you can use as a 13th forward, can go in there from time to time when you need a little bit more physicality. To me, I'm choosing Reese Johnson over Mackenzie Entwistle. As tough of a decision as that is, we'll see if the Blackhawks feel the same way this summer. The next guy, I think, is the one of the bunch that is absolutely deserving of a contract extension. That's Joey Anderson. In 55 games this year, the most of his career. And remember, he didn't make the Blackhawks out of camp. He started things off in Rockford, earned his way back to the NHL and made the most of his opportunity when he got it and ran with it, man. It was awesome to see what Joey Anderson did this year. Career highs across the board, 5 goals, 12 assists, 17 points, was a +5 on this Blackhawks team while averaging over 13 minutes per game, usually on that shutdown third line that Luke Richardson could really trust. I know he's going to turn 26 here in June, but he's another cheap guy that I think you absolutely have to bring back because of what he did this season and what he did at the end of the 2022-2023 campaign as well. He's been really good since joining the Blackhawks organization, a former guest here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Certainly happy to see everything that went Joey Anderson's way this season. I think you have to give him a deal and bring him back. And then the most up for debate one is Taylor Radish, who in 73 games this year was disappointing in basically all of them, only had 5 goals, which he had more than that in the 21 games at the end of the season after he was acquired from the Tampa Bay Lightning. He had 6 in 21 games, only had 5 in 73 this year, added 9 assists along with 14 points. Going to turn 26 years old in February. It's going to be tough to see Taylor Radish coming back, if I'm being honest. I personally would be willing to give him another 1-year deal because we've seen the upside. I know the situation wasn't good for him last year, but we saw the 20-goal upside, 37 points. I do think he could be a decent third-line guy. Just nothing went his way this year, and it's rather unfortunate that happened in a contract year, and it could ultimately cost him his future with the Blackhawks. I would be willing, though, personally, if it was up for Taylor Radish or Colin Blackwell to come back, maybe I'm crazy. I go with Taylor Radish. I think just because he's younger and has the higher upside of the two. I know they're two completely different role players, and maybe Blackwell meshes better with what the Hawks need right here, right now. I personally would be wanting to get back Taylor Radish and to see what he does next year with maybe a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and probably in another contract year as an RFA. So we'll see what happens there out of the forward group, but I think Joey Anderson absolutely deserves to come back. One of Mackenzie Entwistle and Reese Johnson will be back, and one of Taylor Radish or Colin Blackwell will be back as well. I lean Reese and Taylor along with Joey Anderson, but we'll see what happens with the forward group. That is undoubtedly the most intriguing position of the bunch because looking at the Blackhawks defensemen here real quick, I think it's a little bit set in stone what the plans are going to be this offseason out of the 4 UFA/RFA blue liners that the Hawks have to decide upon. Nikita Zaitsev, Jared Tenorti, Jacob Megna, and Alex Vlasic. We know Alex is absolutely going to get a contract extension. He made that very clear. That's his intention this summer during his exit interview. And I'll have a whole show dedicated to Alex Vlasic here probably next week, if not early on in May, all about Alex Vlasic's potential next contract. He absolutely is coming back. And as far as who else we could see back with the Blackhawks next year on defense, Seth Jones obviously will be there along with Connor Murphy, who still has 2 years left on his deal. Kevin Korchinski will be there as well. Going to be interesting to see if he has a stint in Rockford at all next season, now that he will be eligible to do so. And then Wyatt Kaiser, Ethan Del Mastro, and Nolan Allen, I figure, are guys that are going to be pressing up to make the NHL roster. And given there are a lot of guys trying to get in on that action, and I do think the Blackhawks are going to want to go elsewhere and add a guy or two in the free agent market, I think Nikita Zaitsev, Jared Tenorti, and Jacob Megna are all good as gone. I think they've all played their final games as a Chicago Blackhawk. The only real one to me that's kind of up for debate could be Jacob Megna. I think he could be a decent, like, 7th defenseman that you don't have to worry about not playing all that often. I think he could be a good guy to just kind of throw in there from time to time. So maybe Megna comes back, but I do think 100% Jared Tenorti and Nikita Zaitsev are gone. That's going to do it for the Blackhawks UFA and RFAs that they need to decide upon here this season. Going to be really interesting to see whether or not they feel the same way I do. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, don't go anywhere because I'm going to talk real quick about Lukas Reichel joining the Rockford IceHogs for the Calder Cup Playoffs. But first, I need to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game that you want to attend. And I'm happy to announce right here, right now, that Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace officially of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both easier and faster. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last minute deals, all in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally have used Game Time for probably close to a decade now. Whether I'm going to a Blackhawks game at the United Center, going to check out the Cubs at Wrigley Field, or even if I'm traveling and in another city and want to go and see a comedy event with one of my buddies or go and catch a concert, I always make sure to check the Game Time app first because it's the cheapest way to purchase your tickets, the fastest way to purchase your tickets, and the easiest way for you to get your tickets as well. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, make sure to create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you heard me right. You can get $20 off to go and see Seiya Suzuki down at Wrigley Field this season. All you got to do, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time. The Locked On NFL mock draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise. It's not that time yet for the NHL draft, but the NFL draft gets underway tomorrow, and you can get live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft is available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube and also wherever you may listen to your podcasts. Segment 2, now that we know in the first round of the Calder Cup Playoffs, the Blackhawks minor league affiliate Rockford IceHogs are going to be taking on the Grand Rapids Griffins in the Central Division semifinals, which is a best-of-5 series between the 2-seeded Griffins and the 3-seeded IceHogs. Unfortunately, Rockford wasn't able to go and nab that 2 seed to get home ice advantage in this best-of-5 season over Grand Rapids. They ultimately fell just 1 point short of that. However, the structure for which team is hosting for certain games in the Calder Cup playoffs is a lot different than what we see in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So kind of no harm, no foul. Certainly the Griffins do have a home ice advantage, but interestingly enough, the IceHogs are going to be hosting game 1 of this series when things open up on this Saturday, April 27th at the BMO in Rockford. Then games 2 and 3 will jump on over to Grand Rapids. And for game 4, if necessary, it'll head back over to Rockford. And game 5 also, if necessary as well, will finish out in Grand Rapids. But yeah, the Calder Cup playoffs getting underway officially this weekend. And in terms of the regular season head-to-head matchups between Grand Rapids and Rockford, a lot of closely contested games. And funny enough, out of the 12 matchups that they had, each team won 6 of them. So feels like we're in for another close contested couple of games here, however many games the series may be between these two teams. As far as some notables to kind of keep in mind, if you happen to be watching the season or the series, which I highly recommend, I think getting AHL TV is only like $15 or $20 for an entire month worth of action. And I've done it the last 2 years that the IceHogs have been in the postseason. And even though that they fell short to the Texas Stars in the play-in series, I still felt like I got my money's worth. I got good bang for my buck. Being able to watch the IceHogs and some of the Blackhawks' top prospects in the most meaningful time of their season, I think it's always worth it. So I highly recommend everyone out there go and purchases AHL TV for the Calder Cup playoffs. But some notables to keep an eye out for that'll take part in the series for the Grand Rapids Griffins. Jonathan Berggren, who's been around for a minute, was their leading scorer this year. They also have Carter Mazur, who was a teammate of Aiden Thompson's last year at the University of Denver. Simone Edvinson, a high first-round pick for the Red Wings a couple of years ago now. Arvid Soderblom's brother, Elmer Soderblom, is going to be playing for the Grand Rapids Griffins. Of course, this is the minor league affiliate of the Detroit Red Wings, meaning Sebastian Cossa, one of the best goalie prospects in the world, is going to be in net for the Griffins. The man that they took ahead of Jesper Wallstedt, which was a pretty big stunner at the time. We're going to see him in action probably all throughout the series as he's been their starter for the majority of the year and obviously is a high upside guy that they want to be using in these situations. And he'll be going toe-to-toe with the IceHogs here. And Of course, a big addition to Rockford for the Calder Cup playoffs is Lukas Reichel, who spent 10 games down with the IceHogs kind of towards the end of the regular season. Not what he wanted to do, certainly not something that he envisioned at the start of the year, like I mentioned earlier. Felt like he had kind of closed the door on that chapter of his career, but after a very unsuccessful first three quarters of the year with the Blackhawks, ultimately, it felt like they really didn't have a decision but to send Reichel back down to Rockford. But he had a pretty good stint down there, tallied 8 points in 10 games, was rather effective, as he always is for the IceHogs whenever he's down there. And then, like he did at the end of the 2022-2023 season, came back up and looked like a different man, was playing with that intensity, playing with that pace and that speed through the neutral zone, playing with the puck a lot more frequently. Now, part of that I do think is that he actually got to play with some talented players when he got called back up. I think that kind of hindered him a little bit, that he was never able to get that opportunity. Certainly didn't do himself any favors in that matter along the way, but getting him back in Rockford after the way that he finished things up with the Blackhawks here, I think is going to be really huge for them, particularly because Cole Gutman, unfortunately, is dealing with an injury. And ever since he jumped on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, he went on an absolute tear there at the end of the season, man. So hopefully Cole Gutman will be able to get back in the lineup for them sometime sooner rather than later. But forward group that's led by Brett Seney. He was their leading scorer all year long. David Gust was really good when he was healthy. Luke Philp is now healthy as well. Anders Bjork has been solid since going down there, along with Rem Pitlick, who's been over a point per game guy. And then on the back end, you got Ethan Del Mastro, Nolan Allen, Wyatt Kaiser, Isaac Phillips, Louis Crevier. It's a pretty solid young decor that the IceHogs have. And a lot of those guys, of course, are key pieces of the Blackhawks' future on the blue line. So going to be fun to see them in action throughout the Calder Cup playoffs. And then in net going toe-to-toe with Sebastian Cossa. Figures to be Jackson Stauber. He was utilized mostly as the guy down the stretch when the IceHogs went on that great run of theirs to secure the third spot in the Central Division and gave a good run to the 2 seed as well. He's been playing really, really solid hockey, and I think has earned himself another opportunity in the Blackhawks organization, particularly given how much Arvid Soderblom has struggled. So I figure Stauber is probably going to be the guy in the series over Drew Commesso. And yeah, game 1 of this series kicks off on Saturday, believe it or not, already right around the corner at the BMO down in Rockford. Also, some IceHogs news worthy of mentioning, like we've seen go on the past couple of weeks now, that Alex Pharand season has ended with the Sudbury Wolves. Samuel Savoie's season has ended with the Rouen-Noranda Huskies. Both of them have now joined on with the Rockford IceHogs. Pharand by way of an ATO, Savoie being reassigned by the Blackhawks because he has already signed his entry-level deal. I don't think either of them are going to be getting in-game action here, just an opportunity to be around the fellas and get a glimpse of what playoff hockey looks like at the professional level and be able to practice with those guys on a day-to-day basis. I think it's a good opportunity for them. Like we've seen with Nick Lardis and Martin Misiak, I don't think those two guys are going to be getting in any game action. Paul Ludwinski is the one to really keep an eye on because he got in the lineup for a couple of games there at the end of the regular season. Doesn't mean 100% he's going to be in the playoff lineup, but I think he has the best opportunity out of all those guys. So yeah, make sure to keep an eye on the Rockford IceHogs throughout a very meaningful opening round series that kicks off on Saturday against the Grand Rapids Griffins. I'll be covering it all right here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up on the show, I got to talk about Ryan Greene electing to return to Boston University for his junior season. But first, I need to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's also now in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to go to bet on every single game. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Yes, you heard me right. $150 win or lose. And you can use those bonus bets to bet on everything from slap shots throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs to slam dunks on the way to the NBA championship, or even home runs across all of the major league ballparks. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Go and visit FanDuel.com/lockdown right now and make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockdown. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I also got to talk to you all real quick about Policy Genius. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. And some options even offer same-day approval and also help you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace that helps you save both time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting right here today. Go and talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the entire process step by step along your side, comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to get you the best and lowest prices. And Policy Genius is a trustworthy marketplace with thousands of 5-star reviews on both Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. So go and check life insurance off of your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head on over to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL, or you can simply just click the link down in the description to get your free life insurance quotes today and see how much you could be saving. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, if you're still tuning in to this point of today's episode on YouTube, thank you very much. And please make sure to go and smash that like button, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today has got you covered with the top sports stories of the day from the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 3. Before I wrap things up here real quick, I talked about this on the show a couple of days ago, and since then, we've already got official word that Blackhawks prospect and 2022 second-round pick, the 57th overall selection, Ryan Greene, will be returning to Boston University for his junior year after they were unfortunately knocked short of their national championship dreams in the Frozen Four by Boston College. And I talked about this a couple of days ago and said that I really would prefer this to be the route that Ryan Greene takes. So I'm personally pretty happy to hear that he is going to be going back to BU. Yes, he could have gone and turned pro with the IceHogs, and that certainly would have been great. I would have been happy for that as well, but I just really think this is such a prime time opportunity for him. He's likely to be the top line center, the big name on Boston University, one of the premier programs in the country, surely going to be in contention in the top 25 all year long, knock on wood once again. And also, according to, I saw this from Colby Cohen on X, he figures that Ryan Greene could be slotted in to be the next captain of the Terriers. So that's also a great opportunity for him that I think the Blackhawks would love for him to have as well. Plus, he gets another year under his belt. I know it's not professional hockey, but it's still rather good experience. He's going to be a big dog for Boston University, going to be a leader both on and off the ice, and, be the guy that's trying to bring a national championship back to BU. I think that is going to serve Ryan Greene very well. Will Rockford do that same thing in a different path? Yeah, I think that would have been good for him too, but I think waiting one more year isn't the worst thing ever, and it's not like there's contract issues with him or anything. He's still fully expected to sign his ELC whenever the end of his junior season does come to a close, and unless Boston University is playing for a national championship next year, I think we're going to be seeing Ryan Greene making his NHL debut like we saw Frank Nazar in the final games of the 2024-2025 regular season. So Ryan Greene going back to BU, no harm, no foul. I actually personally think it was the right decision for him, and hopefully he just has a monster year as potentially the captain and the top line center as one of the best college teams in the entire country. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get all of the latest videos as soon as they're uploaded each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at JackBushman2. And make sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account as well at Talkin' Hockey. So that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your days. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.